Today's episode is being brought to you by Untarnished, Reclaiming My Self-Worth Through God's Untainted Love. Untarnished is a compelling memoir and simple self-help guide where I give you the inside scoop on my personal journey and provide coping strategies to help others heal from their past. You can download a free copy of the first chapter by heading over to donnacherie.com/untarnished. You're listening to Untarnished Moments, the podcast that helps you shine through life challenges and move past self-defeat into victory. I'm your host, Donna Cherie. Let's get into today's show. What's up, overcomers? Welcome back to another episode of Untarnished Moments. If you've been rocking with me for the past first 4 episodes, I want to say thank you. And if you're new here, welcome. And thanks for checking out the podcast. And be sure to stick around as new episodes air weekly. I'd also be super grateful if you could subscribe, rate, and review this show on Apple Podcasts. Share this podcast with someone you know, love, or anyone you think could benefit from it. If you're listening to this episode in real time, it's the day after Christmas, so I want to say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you and your family. Before we end this year and head into the next, I want you guys to know me better. Some of you may know my story and some of you may not, so let me fill you in. Many of you know me now as a self-worth coach, motivational speaker, and published author, but things haven't always been that way. And here's where my story comes in. A model that I live by and I like to remind and encourage others to live by as well. Starting over doesn't mean you failed unless you stop trying. I'm going to read that again. Starting over doesn't mean you failed unless you stop trying. So many of us have our own rock bottoms. We have our own experiences that shape us, shape our way of thinking, our livelihood, and a lot of different factors. But I want you to remember that starting over doesn't mean that you failed unless you stop trying. So what's my story? To get started, I am originally from New Jersey, born and raised. Whoop whoop to all my New Jersey listeners out there. What's up? And I grew up in a single parent home, and I'm the oldest child from my mother between me and my brother. So my brother is 7 years younger than me. And life in New Jersey was not always easy. I know there's a lot of stereotypes of what we see in the media about New Jersey and what people say who have been there, lived there. Some people call it the trash state. And then some of those things that we do see, sadly, is that they do happen in New Jersey if somebody is in that environment or if they put themselves in harm's way, so to speak. So before the age 10, I really learned about life quickly due to the environment that I was in. I would say that my home life was good, but I'm talking about those external factors, those environmental factors that played a major role in how I grew up, how I behaved, and how I performed and lived in the world. And a few of those things is that I was a latchkey kid. I learned about personal responsibility early on. My mother worked countless hours and I let myself in the house and of course had to take care of my brother to some extent. And during that time before the age of 10, I experienced some childhood trauma. Then by the age of 16, I was headed down a path that I was not thinking ahead of where I could be within teen promiscuity. I had a poor attitude and I just felt like my worth was diminished, that nobody saw me. I felt rejected. I felt ugly. I felt abandoned. For so many reasons, whether it was true or not, I was in my own head. And because of the experiences that I had from those years, it was a battle. Moving on into my college years, because I don't want to necessarily get into the nitty gritty of what happens but by the time that I turned 16, but I went through life. I made it through some challenges. I made it through some of those childhood traumatic experiences, whether that was positively or negatively. Somehow, by the grace of God, I made it through. And I decided in my senior year that I would head and forge off to college, that was something that I always wanted to do, always wanted to achieve, because I felt like that was a way out of how I was living, the way out of how the people I was surrounding myself with at that time. And I thought that it would help me financially. But at that same time, I was young and too grown. I was very independent. I thought that I was untouchable. And in some case, I know earlier I said that I was had this sense of personal responsibility, but at the same time, I was irresponsible for my own life. I was irresponsible for my actions and the decisions that I was making. And then the worst part of all, I was so-called quote unquote in love with the wrong person who ultimately shaped my life down a path that I never thought I would go. So, trauma. What is trauma? According to one definition, trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event like an accident, sexual assault, natural disaster, witnessing gun violence, homelessness, neglect, an absent parent, or even incarceration. And as I stated, before I turned 16 years old, or by the age of 10, I had already had faced traumatic experiences beyond my control. And then in my college years, I found myself getting involved with someone who was going down the wrong path. And I was so in love with this person, or so I thought, and I was looking for his love and his appreciation and all of these things, that I was willing to go so far beyond my own beliefs, my own values. And I also wasn't thinking about the consequences or long-term effects of those decisions that I made that could affect me for years to come. So here is a statement that I found from an article from Words from Prison, just to let you guys know. Like I said, some people, they may have heard my story before or not. And of course, it's in my book as well, where I go into depths about it. But at the age of 21, I was incarcerated, and I never had any priors, never been in trouble or anything like that before, but I ended up incarcerated in a foreign land, so to speak, in a whole nother state, away from my family, away from my friends, and incarcerated for 5 years and 10 months. And this is something that I learned while I was going through this experience about trauma, because I didn't even realize my social factors and my environmental factors and all these things were associated with my past traumas. So here is a statement that I got from a Words from Prison article. It says that the vast majority of women in prison have been victims of violence prior to their incarceration, including domestic violence, rape, sexual assault, and child abuse. And when I found myself in this place of just despair and how in the world did I get to prison? How did I find myself in this situation? And when I reflected back, it was the trauma that brought me here. Anybody who's listening to this, I don't want you to feel sorry for me for any way, shape, or form. I just, maybe you didn't go to prison, or maybe you haven't experienced this level of trauma, but maybe you have experienced some kind of trauma in your life that has brought you to a place to where you feel self-defeated and that you just can't get up from where you are. And this was me at one point. I just really felt like I could not get up from where I was. I was in such a state of self-defeat. And it was during this experience of incarceration, when I just did lots of self-reflection, that I can honestly say that I found myself. Now, The experience itself, yes, it was horrible. It was torture. It was tormenting to be in this physical place, to be in a cage, to be on lockdown for 21 hours a day, to not be able to choose the meals that I want to eat, to not to be able to call my family at the time that I wanted to call them. But in the midst of all of that, I was able to self reflect and to get up, to do something different for myself. And I knew that by the time that I got out, I would be ready to face the world. I'd be ready to endure whatever was coming next, and I'd have a better mindset to be able to do it. So while I was incarcerated, I started preparing myself, changing my mindset with what tools that was there that was provided for me. I did have access to books. I did have access to a radio. And thankfully, I had access to some people from the outside who were strangers, but they still came and surrounded me. They supported me. They prayed with me. They helped me to remain hopeful and to see myself in such a better way, along with counseling. So that was a big factor. And that's something that I'm very, very big on, is counseling, whether that's through a traditional route or untraditional. And I also have resources on my website. If you go under the resources tab for mental health resources, so you can check that out if you'd like. I spent 5 years and 10 months in a facility, a DOC facility, Department of Corrections facility, at the age of 21. And so by the time I got out, I was almost 27 years old. And I'm grateful that I did have an aha moment while I was there, because some people, they don't get that. Some people don't. I saw people come in and out, like during my whole sentence. They would come back 3, 4, 5 times and do another sentence while I was still doing my one. And I knew that I didn't want that to be me, because when someone does go to prison, that can increase the chances of the likelihood, as they say, of someone returning, or recidivism, that if they don't get a job, if they don't find housing, if they don't have social support, family support, that they'll come back. And I knew that I did not want that to be me. So on my journey, I started to begin loving me. And I did that in simple ways. So some of those ways, as simple as this might sound, is just to tell myself that I love myself. I started writing myself letters. I started appreciating myself when I could. I would look in the mirror and tell myself I'm beautiful, and really just start pouring back into me, because I was with this person previously who had no regard for my life, who didn't care if I did close to 6 years. He didn't care where I ended up. But I had to begin to love me, and I had to heal me and unmask all of those things and deal with those emotional issues that I had going on, and stop blaming others for my own decisions, but to fully take responsibility, and of course, to forgive myself. That was definitely one of the major things that I did, that was just, that I believe really helped me and set me free, is that I was able to self-forgive. I want to say this, that there are hindrances to self-love. And some of those hindrances could be guilt, shame, self-defeat, bitterness, hatred, an identity crisis. For myself, I didn't know who I was back then. I didn't know who I was supposed to become. And then it wasn't until years later, and there's still people who go to their grave never identifying who they are, never being their real authentic self. Some other hindrances to self-love can be depression, negative self-talk. And the more that we negative self-talk about ourselves, to ourselves, it hinders us from loving ourselves. So if you're constantly telling yourself that you're dumb, that you're stupid, you're never going to do anything good, then you're going to start to believe those things, because you have embedded that so deep into your consciousness that you start living that out. And I know that to be true for myself. When I was thinking about myself as being stupid, or that I wasn't going to make it, then I was acting like that. I was skipping classes. I was hanging out with people who were smoking weed and doing all kinds of things. And you would think that as people get older that they'll stop doing that, but that's not always the case. I've met people who are 50 years old or, thinking that they're mature in age, but they're not mature in their behavior. And it's important that we get rid of this negative self-talk. And I'm laughing because I was like, Donna, don't start preaching. I'm harping on these hindrances to self-love. So to continue on, some additional hindrances to self-love can be feelings of abandonment, feelings of rejection, trauma, and then not just one single trauma, but if you've experienced trauma on top of trauma, like it feels like you can't even get away from trauma. That could shape how you feel and love yourself or not love yourself. Unforgiveness toward others or unforgiveness toward yourself, hurtful words that you've embedded in your consciousness, whether you've said it to yourself or if somebody else has spoken it over you, that can hinder you from loving yourself. Just being super judgmental to yourself and also others being judgmental to you. And then feelings of being unworthy, just not feeling like you're worthy or that you're good enough to do anything, that can hinder your self-love. And on top of all of that, people can hinder us from having self-love and from seeing our worth. So we definitely have to be careful who we're connected to. And all these things that I just mentioned, these were my own personal hindrances to self-love that I had to deal with. And the process, it doesn't stop. It hasn't stopped for me. I can say I am definitely a positive, happy-go-lucky person, and I believe that I experience joy on a daily basis, but there are times when self-defeat creeps up. There are times when I might have some judgmental thoughts, but I have to get myself back together and remember, one, who I am, whose I am, and to speak life over myself. So on this journey, I'm thankful to God because there's some people who say to me like, Donna, how in the world did you come through 5 years and 10 months of being incarcerated and you're still in a good frame of mind and you're still able to be happy? And it's truly because I've done the work. I've really done and digged and done the internal work when there were dark days, when it was ugly, when I didn't feel like it, when it made me uncomfortable. I knew that in order not to get myself back into this state of mind or this place of incarceration, like I needed to do something different. And so I digged and did the work. So here are 3 self-love tips that I have personally used and that you can use in your day-to-day life that I believe will be helpful to you. And that is 1, you can establish a daily routine. Find something that you like to do that can help you and put you in a positive state of mind throughout your day to where you find joy or where you find serenity, where you find peace. Do that. Develop a daily routine. Start developing a good habit, whether that's reading a book, if you like to exercise, if you want to color, there's adult coloring books that they have available. If you just want to look outside, if you want to walk outside, if you just want to take time to breathe, do that and then practice it daily. Number 2, invest in yourself. Develop personally. What can you do to develop yourself? Is that working on your social skills? Is that taking a class or a hobby? This past summer, which was we're in 2022. Yeah. So this past summer, I developed a hobby. I started gardening, and I'm so glad that I did it. And just the wisdom that I get from doing it by sowing and planting, it's so powerful to me. And playing in the dirt, I know some people they don't like playing in the dirt. That's what us gardeners call it, but it's just something about it that makes me feel connected to the earth and just gives me this great sense of peace, and that helps me to keep developing and working on myself so that I can improve and that I can grow. Like as I'm planting the seeds, these garden seeds, these vegetables and these fruits, and if I nurture it and I put the fertilizer in it and the sun is there, the rain is there, it's going to grow and it's going to produce. And that's the same thing that we have to do in our own lives if we want to be able to grow and produce, is that we have to spend time investing in ourselves and doing what's best for us. The third self-love tip is forgiveness. Forgiveness. And forgiveness is for you, not for them. I had to learn that in my life. I was just the things that I experienced. I was like, man, I wish this person the worst. Why are they still walking around? Why are they having children and doing all these things when they've hurt me, when they mistreated me? Why does it seem like they're having a good life? And I had to realize that the forgiveness, it was not for them, whether they realized it or not, whether they realized they hurt me or not, or if they said, Donna, I'm sorry or not. It doesn't matter. It's not about them. It's about me and it's about you. So forgiveness is for you, not for them. And when I finally got that, when I finally realized that, and trust me, it was not overnight, but when I did, another level of freedom is what I experienced. Some of I don't necessarily want to call them perpetrators, but some of the people who hurt me in my youth, I've seen them in my adult life and even after incarceration. And I've looked at them face to face and I felt compassion for them. I didn't feel angry or hatred toward them because my life turned out good. I'm still here. I'm still alive. I'm still breathing. And I can still live. I can still dream. And so can you if you allow yourself to. But when I looked at this person, I felt pity and I felt compassion for them rather than angry and just bitterness. And I thank God for that. And so truly forgiveness is for you, not for them. Please remember that. And if you want to improve your self-love, do something new and be different. Don't keep going back to the same old thing, the same old places, the same old friends, the same old environments that get you down in this funk, that get you down in the dark. Do something different. With me, I know my do something different could be a little bit more extreme than others because my do something different, when I left incarceration, I knew I wasn't going back to the same state or to the same place that I lived in before, because who knows where that could have led me or who knows what could have been waiting there for me. So I decided to move to a different state. I believe that God was directing me to a different state and to be in North Carolina. So I say, you know what? I'm gonna take a chance and I'm gonna stay here and I know, Lord, that you'll make a way and that this will give me a fresh start. So I decided to do something different. And I'm not suggesting that you move to a whole new state like I did, but just do something different in your life so that you can have fulfillment, so that you can be free, so that you can be happy, so that you can be joyous. Really, during that time of just internal work, and like I said, the internal work, it doesn't stop. Even when you do experience a place of freedom in your life, it doesn't stop there. There's so many layers to an onion, and that's how I look at a life, that it's like an onion. You have to peel back the layers so that you can get to the core. And it's an ongoing basis. And I do believe like that's part of why I do care about just self-improvement, because I know it works. If you keep improving on yourself, everything else will work itself out too. You'll get better opportunities. You'll have a better mindset. You'll feel better in your body, but you have to keep on improving yourself. Since my time of incarceration, which I got out over 10 years ago, praise the Lord. When I got out, everything was not roses, was all roses and all peachy cream. I still had challenges. I still had struggles. I still had emotional struggles, and I still had some scars that I had to deal with, that I needed to put some healing ointment on so that it can get better. And of course, I did that by continuing to self improve. I asked for help. I got involved with the things that I value, like church and just including my daily routine, investing in myself and working on me. So every day was not a good day, but I know because I had a changed mindset that I would overcome. I did have some shock to being out and to being in a new environment. That was an adjustment. It was hard for me to find a job because I had something on my record that I never had before, and I had to explain to an employer what this was all about and to be able to articulate it in a way to which I talked about my character rather than my past, and being able to find housing. So I still had these barriers on top of barriers, if that makes any sense. But I had done the work. I had dealt with the rejection and the abandonment. So if an employer did tell me no, I was able to rise above it and move on. And so life is not about necessarily getting what you want right away and everything going your way. But I believe that we do have to recognize that there are some things in our lives that can hinder us and it shapes us as human beings. But as long as we're still living and breathing, that we can find redemption, that we can find hope, that we can still live the life that we desire to live. Now, because I do have something on my record, are there jobs that I may not be eligible for? Of course. But the things that God has placed in me and the things that I desire, I know that I can go after and achieve regardless of that and still be realistic. And I hope this podcast is not all over the place. Please forgive me if it is, but I also wanted to I'm telling you guys my story, but I'm also wanting to provide you with hope and inspiration so that if you find yourself in a dark place, even during this holiday season, or if you're listening to this later on down the road, that you can live again, that you can get up, that you can move past self-defeat into victory. I'm a living witness. I am a living witness. I have a felony on my record, and yet I work in government. I have this thing, but yet I'm still a homeowner. So there's so many people, there's so many myths out there that will tell you of what you can't do, regardless if you have experienced incarceration or not, or if there's other things in your life that may have happened to you. But just know that if you do the work, if you trust God, if you believe, that you can have a better life. And I definitely want that for all of you. So thank you all for listening, for tuning in today. I hope that was beneficial to your ears and beneficial to your heart, and that there was something that I said today that can be helpful and inspiring to you, and that you will invest in you, and that you'll keep moving past what happened yesterday and move into today. Take care, everyone, and until next time, ciao. Hey, Overcomers. Thanks for tuning in. For more information, head on over to DonnaCherie.com. If you want to find me online, I'm at I am Donna Cherie on Instagram and Donna Cherie on Facebook. Don't forget to join the Overcomers Confidence Club Facebook community. And of course, if you love the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes.